Imagine what it would be like to fight for a dream and, after facing countless challenges, finally see a great opportunity arise. In our story, we will follow Lucas, a young man full of hope who wants to land a job at the company of his dreams. But will he succeed? Because there are many judgments and obstacles in his way, each stage is a test of courage, perseverance, and self-confidence. Will all the effort be worth it? Stay until the end to find out if Lucas will achieve his dream of becoming someone important in life and helping his family out of their difficult situation. Since he was a child, Lucas had always dreamed of working at a large company and being able to help his family. He saw people in suits and ties as symbols of success. After years of hard work, he was finally called in for an interview at a famous multinational company, an opportunity that could change his and his family's lives forever. That day started early. Lucas woke up before the sun rose, reviewed his resume one more time, rehearsed answers to potential questions, and before leaving, took one last look in the mirror. Anxiety was building up, but he knew he had prepared hard for this moment. If you think he's going to be able to help his family, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to the channel, so you can always get stories like this firsthand. Upon arriving at the company, the imposing and modern building left him even more impressed. It was exactly as he had imagined. When he entered the reception area, he noticed that everyone there looked so professional and confident. Lucas tried to stay calm, but his mind was racing. As he waited for his turn, he saw the other candidates and couldn't help but think, "Am I good enough?" When he was finally called in, his heart raced. He entered the interview room and was greeted by two recruiters, a man and a woman, both with serious expressions. The feeling that he was being judged from the moment he opened the door was undeniable. They asked Lucas to talk a bit about himself. This was the moment he had always dreaded, self-description. Despite all his preparation, the words came out with difficulty. Lucas told his story, talking about his education, his experiences, and what motivated him to want to work at that company. With every sentence, he tried to maintain his confidence, but the tension was there, present in every gesture. At the end, the lead recruiter gave a slight smile, thanked him, and said they would be in touch. As he left the room, Lucas didn't know if he had done well or not. That mix of hope and insecurity kept hammering in his mind. He knew that this moment was just the beginning of a long journey. The days following the interview were filled with pure anxiety for Lucas. Every time his phone vibrated, his heart would leap, hoping it was the call from the company. But the notifications were always from ordinary things, an advertising email, messages from friends, or social media updates. The wait seemed endless. Lucas tried to stay calm and focus on other things, but his mind kept returning to that moment in the interview. Had he said enough? Did he make a good impression? The company was so big, and he was just a young man looking for a chance. The doubts and insecurities began to weigh more and more. That week, he met up with some friends to vent. They were excited about their own accomplishments and talked about the jobs they had already secured, although they tried to reassure him, saying it was normal for it to take time to get a response. Lucas couldn't help but feel different. He knew that for him, this opportunity was special, perhaps his only chance to get into such an important company. Each day without news was a new test of patience. His family tried to be supportive, but he could see the same anxiety in their eyes. Even so, Lucas made an effort not to show his concern. He knew his parents were rooting for him, and the last thing he wanted was to make them worry. Finally, after nearly 2 weeks of waiting, the phone rang. It was the company's number. Lucas's heart nearly leapt out of his chest. He answered with a trembling voice, trying to sound calm. But the truth was that he was bursting with excitement inside. "Lucas, we liked your profile and would like to invite you to the second stage of the selection process." He could hardly believe what he was hearing. A new wave of nervousness washed over him, but at the same time, there was a renewed sense of hope. This was his chance to show that he truly deserved to be there. And this time, he was determined to give it his all. The next day, Lucas woke up with the feeling that everything was at stake. The second stage of the selection process was a huge step, and he knew that this time he couldn't let anxiety get the better of him. He put on his best outfit, gathered the same confidence he had for the first interview, and left the house determined. When he arrived at the company, he noticed there were more people there than he expected. It was a room full of candidates, all just as well-dressed and determined as he was. The atmosphere was tense, and Lucas realized the competition would be fierce. "Will I stand out among so many people?" he thought, trying not to let his nervousness show. The second stage consisted of a group activity. Each candidate had to work as part of a team to solve a problem presented by the company. Lucas knew this was the moment to show that he could collaborate, think quickly, and at the same time stand out as a leader. But seeing the other candidates presenting themselves with so much enthusiasm, he felt the fear creeping back in. Was he the least prepared person there? As soon as the activity began, Lucas forced himself to focus on the task and the people around him. The situation was simple, yet full of traps. How could he work as a team without being overshadowed or seeming like he was hiding? He decided to act calmly, listen to others' ideas, and propose solutions based on what he had learned in college and from his experiences in smaller jobs. During the discussion, one of the candidates began to assert themselves more than the others, trying to dominate the conversation. Lucas watched carefully, and instead of engaging in confrontation, he saw it as an opportunity to show a different side of himself. When the group got stuck on a decision, he suggested an alternative solution based on consensus. To his surprise, everyone accepted his proposal, including the candidate who had been dominating the situation. Gradually, Lucas gained more confidence. He realized he didn't need to be the loudest or the most outgoing person to stand out. His calm approach, his ability to listen, and his clear reasoning were getting noticed in a subtle but effective way. At the end of the group activity, one of the evaluators approached the group and asked a series of questions about the solution they had presented. Lucas was the first to respond, explaining how they had arrived at their conclusion. He could feel the evaluator's eyes on him, assessing every word, every gesture. But this time, unlike the first interview, Lucas felt secure. He knew he had given his best, and that regardless of the result, he had shown who he truly was. After a few days of waiting for the results of the group activity, Lucas was anxious. He knew he had done his best, but he couldn't shake the nervousness. Every time his phone vibrated, his heart raced, hoping it was the company's response. But the notifications continued to be from friends and family, asking about the selection process, which only heightened his anticipation. Finally, an email arrived. Lucas took a deep breath before opening it. "Thank you for participating in the second stage of the selection process. After careful evaluation," he paused to absorb those words. This was it. His heart tightened, but he forced himself to keep reading. "We are pleased to inform you that you have been selected for the final stage." Lucas let out a sigh of relief. He made it. He was in the final stage. All the effort, preparation, and self-control during the group activity had paid off. The euphoria took over for a few minutes, but it was soon replaced by the realization that the real challenge was still ahead. The final stage would be an interview with the company's directors. And this time, he would be alone, with no other candidates to share the evaluator's attention. That night, Lucas could hardly sleep. He tossed and turned in bed, thinking of all the possible questions he might face. He remembered the advice his friends had given him, the tips he had read online about how to impress directors. But deep down, what bothered him the most was the fear that he might not be good enough. "Am I really good enough?" he kept asking himself. The day of the interview came quickly, and Lucas decided the best thing he could do was stay calm and be himself, just as he had done in the other stages. When he entered the company's meeting room, he was greeted by two directors. Both had a serious but polite demeanor, which only heightened Lucas's nerves. He sat down, adjusted his posture, and waited for the first questions. They began in a friendly manner, asking Lucas to talk a bit about his background. He spoke about his studies, his passion for learning, and how he had always sought to overcome challenges, even in smaller jobs. Little by little, he started to relax, getting into the rhythm of the conversation. But deep down, Lucas knew the harder questions were still to come. And he was right. At one point, one of the directors looked at him more seriously and asked, "Why do you think you would be a good fit for this company, considering the level of competition we've seen?" It was the question he had dreaded the most. Lucas took a deep breath and tried to recall everything he had studied, but instead of giving a rehearsed answer, he decided to be honest. He talked about his commitment, how he would dedicate himself fully to learning and growing within the company, and how the diversity of his previous experiences had prepared him to face any challenge. "I'm not perfect," he said, "but I'm willing to give my all to be the best I can be here." The directors exchanged a look, and Lucas couldn't tell whether it was a good or bad sign. But at the end of the interview, one of the directors said something unexpected. "You have a humility that we don't see every day, and that could be a major asset." Lucas left the room not knowing exactly what to think. He had been sincere, but would that be enough? After the interview, Lucas felt a mix of relief and uncertainty. He had done his best, been honest, and now everything was out of his control. In the following days, he tried to distract himself, but the anxiety was constant. Every time he thought about the directors, the questions, and how they had evaluated him, the nervousness returned. He started to second-guess himself. Had he been too sincere? Should he have sold himself more, shown more confidence than he actually felt? But he knew there was no point in torturing himself with these doubts. What was done was done. While he waited for the result, life went on, but it felt like it was in slow motion. His friends asked how he was doing, and his mother reassured him, saying she was proud of everything he had accomplished so far. But Lucas still had that nervous feeling in his stomach every time he remembered that his future depended on that decision. He knew that many other candidates had gone through the same stages and that the competition was fierce. After all, who wouldn't want to work for such a prestigious company? To keep his mind busy, he started reviewing his other plans. If this didn't work out, he would look for new opportunities. This can't be the only path, he thought, trying to convince himself that no matter the outcome, he would find a way to achieve his goals. A week passed, and Lucas still hadn't received any response. The anxiety started to turn into a kind of impatience. He checked his email several times a day and couldn't help but imagine different scenarios. Being called to start right away, or receiving a rejection with some generic comment like, "Thank you for participating, but we've decided to move forward with another candidate." It was in this state of uncertainty that Lucas began to realize something important. He had already overcome many obstacles to get this far. He had managed to stand out in the previous stages, even when he felt insecure. Perhaps the biggest lesson wasn't just about the job itself, but about everything he had gained in terms of self-confidence and self-awareness. One day, while checking his messages once again, a new notification appeared. It was the email he had been waiting for. Lucas felt his heart race. This was it. He clicked on the email and carefully read the message. "Dear Lucas, after reviewing the final stage of the selection process, we are pleased to inform you that you have been approved to join our team." He could hardly believe what he was reading. The smile was immediate. All those days of tension and doubt seemed to evaporate. Lucas had made it. After reading the email, Lucas could barely contain his happiness. He ran to share the news with his mother, who hugged him proudly, with tears in her eyes. For Lucas, it was a dream come true, but he knew the real challenge was just beginning. The first day at the big company came quickly. Lucas woke up early, chose what he thought was an appropriate business outfit, and left home with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The company's building was even more impressive in person. Reflective glass walls, a huge bustling reception area, with people constantly coming and going. Upon entering, he introduced himself at the reception desk and was instructed to wait for a supervisor who would accompany him throughout the day. Lucas found himself observing everything around him. Everyone seemed very busy, focused on their tasks. He wondered if he would ever feel as comfortable in that environment. Minutes later, a woman in a suit, looking very professional, approached him. "Lucas," she asked with a smile. "I'm Mariana, your supervisor for the first few days. I'll show you around." Lucas smiled back, trying to appear confident. Mariana began the tour, introducing each department and some of the people he would be working with. The office was huge, with several meeting rooms, modern workstations, and a cafeteria that looked like something out of a movie. Lucas was impressed at every step. During the introductions, he noticed a few curious glances. Perhaps it was because he was the new employee, or maybe something else that he couldn't quite identify at the time. When they finally reached his desk, Mariana explained his first tasks. He would start with something simple, reviewing some documents and learning about the company's internal processes. Nothing too complex, but even so, Lucas felt the pressure. He wanted to make a good impression right from the start, to show they had made the right choice in hiring him. The day passed, and Lucas tried to absorb as much information as possible. As he interacted with his colleagues, he realized that many of them had been there for a long time and seemed to know each other well. They talked, laughed, and he felt a little out of place in the midst of such familiarity. Still, Lucas stayed focused. He wasn't there to make friends on the first day, but to learn and show his value. By the end of the day, he felt exhausted, but also a sense of accomplishment. He had survived the first day, learned a lot, and most importantly, hadn't made any serious mistakes. As he left the company, he felt good. The walk home was filled with reflections about the future. He knew the coming days wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. In the following days, Lucas began to familiarize himself with the company's routine. Mariana continued to assign him tasks, each one slightly more challenging, but he worked hard to handle everything. Gradually, he began to understand the processes better and how the company operated. However, he couldn't help but notice that some people seemed to keep a certain distance. Even though he was polite, he could sense looks that sometimes felt like they were judging him. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but as the days passed, the feeling became more evident. One situation stuck with him. During a meeting, he made a suggestion, and instead of receiving feedback, his colleagues exchanged glances and quickly changed the subject. Lucas sensed that something was off, but he decided not to let it bother him. Focused on his goal, he pressed on. He knew he would have to prove his value, not just through his work, but also by overcoming the invisible barrier that seemed to separate him from the others. With time, Lucas began to adapt better to the company's environment. Tasks that once seemed impossible were now challenges he was eager to tackle. His confidence grew as he became more involved in projects, collaborated with colleagues, and even received praise for some of his initiatives. He realized that despite the initial difficulties and distant looks from some, he was starting to carve out his space. Lucas also began to be noticed for his ability to solve problems calmly and objectively. In meetings, his suggestions were heard with more attention, and teamwork flowed more naturally. There were still challenges, of course, but he no longer felt like the lost newcomer. Slowly, the barriers that once seemed insurmountable began to fall, and Lucas felt like he was finally finding his place. After so much effort and dedication, recognition finally began to come. The boss, who once seemed distant and demanding, started paying closer attention to Lucas's work. One day, after the completion of an important project, Lucas was called in for a conversation. "I've noticed your performance," said the boss, "and I wanted to congratulate you on the ideas and dedication you've shown." That validation brought Lucas a sense of accomplishment. Not only was he successfully completing his tasks, but he was also starting to stand out in a positive way. Soon after, a great opportunity arose, the chance to participate in an innovative company project. For Lucas, this was his moment to prove once again that all his hard work had been worth it. He knew this was his opportunity to shine even brighter. Over time, Lucas transformed from a mere insecure newcomer, full of doubts, into someone who truly made a difference in the company. He had earned the trust of the team and his superiors, and his participation in the innovative project yielded results that were recognized by all. Each day, Lucas felt more comfortable in his role, and the colleagues who once viewed him as a stranger now respected him as an essential part of the team. More than ever, Lucas felt like he belonged there. He was no longer just learning, but also contributing significantly to the company's success. The future, which once seemed uncertain, was now full of possibilities. His first job, which had started as a major challenge, had become the greatest achievement of his life so far. Now, Lucas knew he was ready for anything that came his way, with the confidence of someone who had found his place.